fix it. But look at Tony, there's always this question of there's things that happen in government level, policy level, and then there's us, right? People now dealing with, the fuel crisis, and is there a connection to that kind of crisis? And it could get worse in our pockets, in what happens day-to-day life in our businesses, employment, that sort of thing. Could it get worse? Or we're just possibly saying our own things, and perhaps after August 9th, it could be like kumbaya and we're all happy?
I think it will get worse. That is the sad thing about it. To start, it's a very big problem that we have. And it's something that has been happening for quite a number of years. We've mismanaged our economy for a period of time, as Wanjiru Gikonya said, about how government has been handling the economy. The biggest difference, so let me start by what is the problem. The biggest difference between Kibaki government and the Jubilee government. Kibaki government did a very small framework, apart from the economic strategy and recovery and wealth plan, is that when he took over from Kanu had a model of borrowing heavily from the local banks. And then that is the main source of revenue, apart from taxation. So that crowded out private sector. There was very little private sector, and there's very little taxation, tax collection. And so when Kibaki came, he changed that government will not be borrowing heavily. We leave that banks should lend to the public. Apart from that, we reformed a little bit of tax collection. And so from giving money to the private sector, there was growth and able to collect more taxes.
Right. So that happens in business, so the business
Yes, you help the private credit market grow, so business are able to grow.
Right.
Apart from that, he made sure that there was no commercial borrowing in the international market. There was no Eurobond during Kibaki's time. So apart from that, he tried to, the budget deficit that was there, he tried to plug that with selling and disposing public companies on the IPO. So you're raising money from other sources, not taxes, but from other sources, to plug in the budget. So when Jubilee government came in, they did the completely opposite of all those three things. That is a problem. So they actually, government is borrowing heavily, and they crowded out private sector. Apart from that, went in a heavy borrowing spree in the international market. And the third, under Jubilee government, we've never had any privatization program for the last almost 10 years.
Right.
And so that is the crux of the matter, and that is the difference. So when you're going from that period of time, so we've mishandled the economy for a period of time. And so we get to a point where you have a pandemic. You have a pandemic when you're paying almost 60% of your revenues to debt. At the same time, taxation is not growing. Today, we can talk about tax to GDP ratio. It's going down, which means productivity is going down.
Yeah.
The growth, GDP might be growing, but your taxation is small.
Right.
So it means the economy is not growing with people together. So that is a problem.
So that's where the mismatch. Let me bring Joram, because Joram, yours is, again, more experiential. You deal with businesses and you help, people to try and figure out this mess, that you're in for the last 10 years. Yeah. From where you sit, how do you think we are in? What would be sort of your diagnosis of where we are in?
Actually, when, I was preparing for this, one of the things I was trying to see is there anything the three of us can say that gives hope to Kenyans? Because everything is pointing in a difficult direction, not just now, but going forward.
Yeah.
And as you said, I deal with a lot of business people. So if we were to take the experience of a business person today, what is he experiencing? He is paying more for fuel. He is paying more for food, more for electricity, despite a promise that was supposed to come down. If he's exchanging the dollar while doing a Kenya shilling to the dollar while doing business, it's a terrible situation. So you find like the entrepreneur or the business person is squeezed from every direction, and when he goes to the bank, he wants to borrow. Who's competing with him? The government. So who's the bank going to lend to the government or the business person? So I find the Kenyan entrepreneur the most squeezed person, left, right, and center. They were just coming out of COVID, where they had probably seen a drop of up to 80% of their revenues. I think that may have recovered a little bit by like 40% on average. So you're just coming out of a pandemic, you've just tightened your belts, maybe you've let people go, you're coming out of that. Then we are going into an election. And typically in an election year, everything tends to slow down. People stop making decisions, people stop investing, people wait and see. So I feel like we're in a perfect storm. And then throw on top of that, president decides to go to war, and it affects our commodity prices, affects oil prices. So I do not know of a period in the last 10, 15 years where things have been as crazy as they are today. And part of the other challenge, and people like Tony can tell us, is that it's very difficult to plan because we are not very clear what's our debt repayment schedule like. Can we plan for the next 5 years knowing how much our government is going to pay? They tend to have all these negotiations in the background with their lenders and restructure things. But a year comes and we are very surprised that we are paying now 60% of our budget towards the debt repayment. Next year, is it going to be 70? Is it going to be 80? We don't really know. They signed secretive contracts. So we are in that stage where it's very difficult to plan as a business person to know, what's the outlook going to be like in the next 5 years. Should I save? Should I invest? Should I increase productivity? It's just up there in the air.